A poor single dad saved a rich CEO's life and got shot. The next morning she came to his door crying. Neither of them knew that one. Brave moment would change everything and turn strangers into a family. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching, also like and subscribe. For more story. Tommy Chen woke up at 5:30 a.m. to the sound of his alarm clock. The small apartment was quiet except for the gentle breathing of his 6-year-old daughter Lily, sleeping in the bed next to his. They shared the tiny one-bedroom apartment because Tommy couldn't afford anything bigger. He worked as a security guard at the downtown office building, earning just enough to pay rent and buy food. Every penny mattered. Lily's school clothes came from thrift stores, and their dinners were usually rice with whatever vegetables were on sale. But when Lily smiled at him each morning, Tommy felt like the richest man in the world. "Daddy, is it time for school?" Lily whispered, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Not yet, princess. Sleep a little more," Tommy said softly, kissing her forehead. Tommy's wife had left them 2 years ago. She said she couldn't handle being poor anymore. She wanted a better life, one that didn't include a struggling security guard and his daughter. The divorce papers came with a note. "I'm sorry. I love Lily, but I can't do this anymore." Tommy never heard from her again. Since then, it had been just him and Lily against the world. Tommy worked double shifts whenever possible. He studied English at night, hoping to get a better job someday. But his priority was always Lily, making sure she felt loved, safe, and happy. "Daddy has to go to work early today," Tommy explained as he made breakfast. "Mrs. Kim will walk you to school." Mrs. Kim was their elderly Korean neighbor who helped watch Lily when Tommy worked extra hours. She was like a grandmother to Lily, and Tommy was grateful for her kindness. "Will you pick me up after school?" Lily asked, eating her cereal. "Always, princess. Daddy will always come for you." Across town, Victoria Sterling stood in her penthouse apartment, looking out at the city skyline. At 32, she was the youngest CEO of Sterling Industries, a company worth billions of dollars. She had everything money could buy: luxury cars, designer clothes, a mansion in the hills. But Victoria was terrified. Her ex-husband, Marcus, had been calling and texting for weeks. Their divorce had been finalized 6 months ago, but Marcus refused to accept it. He wanted her back, and he was becoming more dangerous every day. "You can't just throw away 5 years of marriage," Marcus had screamed during their last phone call. "I made you who you are." Victoria's hands shook as she remembered his words. Marcus had been controlling throughout their marriage. He monitored her phone, chose her clothes, and isolated her from friends. The divorce was the first free choice she'd made in years, but freedom came with a price. Marcus had threatened to hurt her, to destroy her company, to make sure she regretted leaving him. Victoria's security team suggested she stay home, but she refused to live in fear. Sterling Industries needed her. Her employees depended on her. She wouldn't let Marcus control her life anymore. "Mrs. Sterling, your car is ready?" her assistant called. Victoria took a deep breath, grabbed her briefcase, and headed to another day of looking over her shoulder. Tommy arrived at the Sterling Industries building at 6 a.m. for his morning shift. He liked the early hours when the building was quiet. It gave him time to think and plan for Lily's future. The building was 50 stories tall, filled with successful people doing important work. Tommy sometimes wondered what it would be like to have their education, their opportunities, their money. But he never felt bitter about it. Tommy believed everyone had their own path in life. His path was taking care of Lily and working hard to give her better opportunities than he'd had. "Morning, Tommy," called Sarah, the reception desk manager. "Quiet night?" "Very quiet." "How's your daughter doing in college?" Sarah smiled. "Great, thanks for asking. She's studying to be a teacher." Tommy nodded approvingly. Teachers were important people. Maybe someday Lily would be a teacher or a doctor, or even run a company like the people in this building. At 8 a.m., the building came alive with workers arriving for the day. Tommy positioned himself in the lobby, watching people come and go. His job was to keep everyone safe, and he took that responsibility seriously. He noticed the CEO, Victoria Sterling, arrive with her usual security detail. She was a small woman with kind eyes, but Tommy could see she was nervous about something. Her security guards looked tense, too. Tommy had been working security for 10 years. He knew how to read people, how to spot trouble before it started. Something was wrong today. Marcus Sterling sat in his car across the street from the Sterling Industries building. He'd been there for 3 hours, watching and waiting. His plan was simple: corner Victoria when she least expected it and force her to listen to reason. Marcus couldn't accept that their marriage was over. He'd built his entire identity around being Victoria's husband. Without her, he felt like nothing. She just needs to remember how good we were together, Marcus told himself. She's confused, but I can fix this. Marcus had lost his job after the divorce. Victoria's lawyers had made sure he couldn't work in their industry anymore. His friends had chosen sides and most chose Victoria. His family was disappointed in him for losing such a successful wife. The anger had been building for months. Marcus blamed Victoria for everything wrong in his life. If she would just come back, everything would be perfect again. Marcus checked his gun one more time. He didn't want to hurt anyone, but sometimes people needed motivation to make the right choice. He waited until he saw Victoria's security team escort her to lunch. This was his chance. Victoria and her 2 bodyguards walked to the small cafe across the street. It was one of the few normal things Victoria still did, eating lunch at the same place she'd been going for 5 years. Tommy watched from the lobby window. Something felt wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on it. A car had been parked across the street all morning. The driver never got out, never moved. Tommy's instincts told him to pay attention. Victoria ordered her usual salad and sat at her regular table. Her bodyguards positioned themselves nearby, scanning the room for threats. Marcus entered through the back door of the cafe. He'd spent weeks planning this route, studying the building's layout, timing the security patrols. "Victoria," Marcus called out. Victoria's blood turned to ice. She turned around and saw her ex-husband standing 10 feet away with a gun in his hand. "Marcus, please," Victoria said quietly. "Don't do this." "You destroyed my life," Marcus said, his voice shaking with emotion. "You took everything from me. My job, my friends, my future. And for what? So you could be alone in your ivory tower." The bodyguards reached for their weapons, but Marcus swung his gun toward them. "Don't move! This is between me and my wife." "Ex-wife," Victoria corrected, trying to stay calm. "Marcus, we can talk about this." "Put the gun down." People in the cafe started screaming and running. Someone called 911. The situation was spiraling out of control. Tommy saw the commotion from across the street. People were running out of the cafe, screaming about a man with a gun. Through the window, he could see Victoria Sterling trapped inside with her attacker. Tommy's training kicked in. He was supposed to stay at his post and wait for police. But Victoria was in immediate danger, and help might not arrive in time. Tommy thought about Lily. If he got hurt or killed, what would happen to her? She'd be an orphan, alone in the world. But then he thought about Victoria's kind eyes, about how she always said good morning to the security staff when most executives ignored them. He thought about how she'd helped pay for the medical bills when one of the janitors had a heart attack. Victoria was a good person who didn't deserve to die because her ex-husband couldn't accept rejection. Tommy made his choice. He ran across the street, pulling out his phone to call for backup as he moved. The cafe was nearly empty now, except for Victoria, Marcus, and the 2 bodyguards who were trying to negotiate. "Marcus, think about what you're doing," one of the bodyguards said. "This won't solve anything." "You don't understand," Marcus screamed. "She was everything to me. Without her, I'm nothing." Tommy entered through the front door, moving quietly. He could see Marcus was unstable, emotional, dangerous. The gun was pointed directly at Victoria. "I loved you," Marcus continued, tears streaming down his face. "I gave you everything, and you threw it away like garbage." "You controlled me," Victoria said firmly. "That's not love, Marcus. That's ownership." Marcus's face twisted with rage. "Then maybe if I can't have you, nobody can." He raised the gun toward Victoria's heart. Tommy didn't think. He just moved. Tommy dove forward just as Marcus pulled the trigger. The bullet meant for Victoria's chest tore through Tommy's shoulder instead, spinning him around and sending him crashing into a table. The bodyguards immediately tackled Marcus, wrestling the gun away from him. Customers who had been hiding behind the counter rushed forward to help. Victoria knelt beside Tommy, who was bleeding heavily from his shoulder. His face was pale, but his eyes were alert. "Why?" Victoria whispered, pressing her jacket against his wound to stop the bleeding. "Why did you do that?" Tommy looked up at her and smiled weakly. "Because," You have people who need you. Important work to do. I couldn't let him take that away. You don't even know me, Victoria said, tears streaming down her face. I know enough, Tommy replied. I know you're kind to people like me. I know you care about your employees. I know the world is better with you in it. The ambulance arrived within minutes. As paramedics loaded Tommy onto a stretcher, Victoria grabbed his hand. What's your name? She asked. Tommy Chen. I work security in your building. Do you have family? Someone I can call? Tommy thought about Lily, probably just getting out of school, waiting for him to pick her up. My daughter. Lily, she's 6, Mrs. Kim at 1247 Oak Street, apartment 3B is watching her. Please, make sure she's okay. Victoria squeezed his hand. I promise. As the ambulance drove away, Victoria stood in the destroyed cafe, covered in Tommy's blood, watching the man who saved her life disappear around the corner. The media descended on the story within hours. CEO saved by hero security guard was the headline on every news channel. Marcus was arrested and charged with attempted murder, kidnapping, and assault with a deadly weapon. But Victoria wasn't thinking about the headlines. She was thinking about a 6-year-old girl named Lily, who was probably wondering why her daddy didn't come to pick her up from school. Victoria drove to Oak Street, a neighborhood she'd never visited before. The apartment building was old but clean, the kind of place where working families tried to make ends meet. Mrs. Kim answered the door, holding a little girl with Tommy's eyes and smile. Are you here about Tommy? Mrs. Kim asked in accented English. Yes, I'm Victoria Sterling. Your neighbor saved my life today. Mrs. Kim invited Victoria inside. The apartment was tiny but spotless, filled with children's drawings and photos of Tommy and Lily together. Victoria could see how much love lived in this small space. Daddy's late, Lily said, looking up at Victoria with curious eyes. He's never late. Victoria knelt down to Lily's level. Lily, your daddy is very brave. He helped someone today, but he got hurt doing it. He's in the hospital, but the doctors are taking good care of him. Lily's eyes filled with tears. Is Daddy going to die? Victoria's heart broke. No, sweetheart. Your daddy is going to be okay, but he needs to stay in the hospital for a while to get better. Can I see him? Yes, I'll take you to see him right now. At the hospital, Victoria learned more about Tommy's condition. The bullet had damaged his shoulder and he'd lost a lot of blood, but he would recover. The surgery had been successful and he was awake and asking about Lily. Victoria brought Lily to Tommy's room. The little girl ran to her father's bedside, careful not to hurt him. Daddy, you're okay. Tommy smiled, though Victoria could see he was in pain. Of course I'm okay, Princess. It takes more than that to keep Daddy down. The nice lady said you were a hero. Tommy looked at Victoria, who was standing quietly by the door. I'm not a hero, Lily. I just did what anyone would do. No, Victoria said, stepping forward. Not anyone would do what you did. You saved my life without thinking about your own safety. You are absolutely a hero. Victoria spent the next hour getting to know Tommy and Lily. She learned about Tommy's 2 jobs, his night school classes, his dreams for Lily's future. She learned about Lily's love of books, her drawings, her hope that Daddy would take her to Disneyland someday. She also learned about their struggles. The medical bills from this hospital stay would bankrupt them. Tommy would be out of work for months while his shoulder healed. They might lose their apartment. When visiting hours ended, Victoria tucked her business card into Tommy's hand. Call me when you're ready to go home, she said. We have a lot to talk about. The story exploded across social media. Video footage from the cafe showed Tommy's heroic dive to save Victoria. News outlets picked up the story of the single father who risked everything to save a CEO he barely knew. Interview requests poured in, but Victoria declined them all. This wasn't about publicity for her. This was about a man who deserved recognition for his courage. Tommy also refused interviews from his hospital bed. He was embarrassed by the attention and insisted he wasn't special. But the public disagreed. A GoFundMe page appeared online to help with Tommy's medical bills. Donations poured in from around the world. $50 from a teacher in Ohio, $100 from a retired nurse in Florida, $25 from a college student in California. Within 48 hours, the fund had raised over $200,000. Victoria watched the donations climb and realized something important. Tommy's story had touched people because it reminded them that ordinary heroes exist everywhere. In a world full of bad news, Tommy represented something pure and good. Victoria couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Tommy and Lily, about their tiny apartment and uncertain future. She thought about how Tommy had sacrificed himself for a stranger, asking for nothing in return. Victoria had been thinking about this all wrong. This wasn't about paying Tommy back or offering charity. This was about recognizing that some people make the world better just by being in it. The next morning, Victoria called an emergency board meeting at Sterling Industries. "I want to create a new position," she announced to the 12 board members, Director of Security and Community Relations. "The salary will be $150,000 per year, with full benefits, college tuition assistance for dependents, and a company car." "That's quite generous for a security position," one board member noted. "It's not just security," Victoria explained. "This person would oversee all our community outreach programs, our employee assistance funds, our relationships with local schools and charities. We need someone who understands what working families face, someone who cares about people, not just profits." "Do you have someone in mind?" another board member asked. Victoria smiled. "I do. His name is Tommy Chen." 3 days later, Tommy was released from the hospital. Victoria picked him and Lily up personally, driving them home in her car. "This is the nicest car I've ever been in," Lily said from the back seat. "Would you like to see where I work?" Victoria asked. "Can we, Daddy?" Tommy was still weak from his injuries, but he agreed. Victoria drove them to Sterling Industries and gave them a private tour of the building Tommy had protected for 5 years, but never really seen. Lily was amazed by everything. The elevators, the conference rooms, the cafeteria, the executive offices. Tommy was impressed by how well Victoria knew her employees, how she remembered names and asked about families. In Victoria's office, overlooking the city, Victoria made her offer. "I want you to come work for me, Tommy. Not as a security guard, but as our Director of Security and Community Relations." Tommy stared at her in disbelief. "I don't understand." Victoria explained the position, the salary, the benefits. Tommy's eyes widened with each detail. "Why?" Tommy asked. "I'm not qualified for something like that." "You're the most qualified person I know," Victoria replied. "You understand what matters. You care about people. You put others before yourself. Those aren't skills you can teach. They're character traits you're born with." Tommy looked at Lily, who was playing with toys Victoria kept in her office for visiting children. "I need to think about it," Tommy said. "Of course. Take all the time you need." That night, Tommy sat in his small apartment thinking about Victoria's offer. The salary was more money than he'd ever imagined earning. Lily could go to good schools, have nice clothes, take music lessons. They could move to a real house with a yard, but Tommy had always been cautious about things that seemed too good to be true. "What are you thinking about, Daddy?" Lily asked, climbing into his lap. The nice lady offered Daddy a new job. "Would we see her every day?" "Yes, Princess, I like her. She's pretty and she's nice to you, and she has good toys in her office." Tommy laughed. "Those are important qualifications. Is it a good job?" Tommy thought about Victoria's offer, about the opportunity to help other families like his own, about being able to give Lily the future she deserved. "Yes, Princess, I think it might be a very good job." The next morning, Tommy called Victoria. "I accept," he said simply. "Really?" "Yes, but I have one condition." Victoria held her breath. "What's that?" "I want to earn this position. No special treatment because of what happened. I want to prove I deserve it." Victoria smiled. "Deal. Can you start Monday?" Tommy's first day as Director of Security and Community Relations was overwhelming. He had his own office, an assistant, a budget for community programs, and more responsibility than he'd ever imagined. But Victoria was patient, teaching him about the business side of the company while learning from him about the employee side. Tommy understood the security guards, the janitors, the cafeteria workers in ways that Victoria never could. "The night shift security guards need better training," Tommy reported in his first weekly meeting. "And the cleaning staff should get health insurance. Most of them have families but can't afford to get sick." Victoria nodded, taking notes. "What else?" "The employee break rooms need updating. People spend 12 hours a day here. They should have comfortable places to rest. And we should partner with the elementary school down the street. A lot of our employees' kids go there, but the school needs supplies and volunteers." Within a month, Tommy had revolutionized the company's approach to employee relations. Morale improved dramatically. Turnover decreased. Productivity increased. But the biggest change was in Tommy himself. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was making a real difference in the world. Victoria and Tommy developed an unexpected friendship. They had lunch together most days, talking about work, life, and their dreams for the future. Victoria learned that Tommy was taking business classes at night, determined to grow into his new role. Tommy learned that Victoria had started the company's scholarship program because she remembered what it was like to work her way through college. "I never thanked you properly," Victoria said one afternoon. "For what?" "For saving my life. For showing me what real courage looks like. For helping me remember why this company exists, to create opportunities for people like you." Tommy smiled. "You thanked me by giving me and Lily a chance at a better future. I should be thanking you." "We make a good team," Victoria observed. "Yes, we do." Lily loved coming to the office after school. She'd do homework in Tommy's office, then visit Victoria to share stories about her day. Victoria found herself looking forward to these visits, enjoying Lily's innocence and enthusiasm. "Miss Victoria," Lily said one day, "do you have a little girl?" "No, sweetheart." "I don't. Why not?" Victoria paused, not sure how to explain her complicated relationship history to a 6-year-old. "I just haven't found the right family yet," Victoria said finally. "Oh," Lily said thoughtfully. "Well, you can share ours if you want. Daddy says sharing is good." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "That's the nicest offer anyone's ever made me." Marcus's trial began 6 months after the shooting. Victoria had to testify about the attack, reliving the fear and trauma of that day. Tommy insisted on attending, despite Victoria's protests that he didn't need to put himself through that. "You were there for me," Tommy said. "I'm here for you." The trial was difficult. Marcus's lawyer tried to paint him as a man driven to desperation by a cold, heartless ex-wife. But the evidence was clear. Marcus had planned the attack, brought a weapon, and intended to kill Victoria. Tommy's testimony was powerful. He described Victoria's kindness to employees, her character, her contributions to the community. He explained why he'd risked his life to save her. "She didn't deserve to die," Tommy said simply. "No one deserves to die because someone else can't handle rejection." Marcus was convicted on all charges and sentenced to 15 years in prison. After the trial, Victoria and Tommy stood outside the courthouse together. "It's over," Victoria said, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. "Now you can really move forward," Tommy agreed. "We can move forward," Victoria corrected. "All of us." A year after the shooting, Tommy graduated from his business program with honors. Victoria and Lily sat in the front row cheering when his name was called. "I'm so proud of you, Daddy," Lily shouted, not caring that everyone in the auditorium could hear her. Tommy had transformed from a security guard struggling to make ends meet into a confident business executive. But more importantly, he'd found his calling in helping other people achieve their dreams. The community programs he'd developed were featured in business magazines as models for other companies. The Employee Assistance Fund he'd created had helped dozens of families through medical emergencies and financial crises. "You've exceeded every expectation," Victoria told him at the graduation party. "I had good teachers," Tommy replied, "and a boss who believed in me before I believed in myself." "Speaking of which," Victoria said, "the board approved your promotion." "Congratulations, Vice President Chen." Tommy stared at her in shock. "Vice President? You've earned it. The Community Relations Division you built is now one of our most successful departments. You're changing how corporations think about social responsibility." Tommy hugged Victoria tightly. "Thank you for seeing something in me that I didn't see in myself." 2 years after that day in the cafe, Victoria realized she'd fallen in love. Not just with Tommy, but with the family they'd accidentally created together. She watched Tommy help Lily with her homework, attended Lily's school plays, shared quiet dinners in Tommy's apartment that had become her favorite place in the world. But Victoria was scared. Her first marriage had been a disaster. Tommy had been hurt by his ex-wife's abandonment. They both had reasons to be cautious about love. One evening, as they walked through the park near Tommy's apartment, Victoria finally found the courage to speak. "Tommy, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you think we could be more than friends?" Tommy stopped walking and looked at her seriously. Victoria, I've been hoping you'd ask that question for months. Really? Really. You've become part of our family already. Lily loves you. I love you. The question is, are you ready for a life that's very different from what you're used to? Victoria thought about her empty penthouse, her lonely dinners, her successful but solitary life. I've been ready for 2 years, she said. I just didn't know how to ask. Tommy kissed her gently. You just did. They were married a year later in a small ceremony at the community center Tommy had helped build. Lily was the flower girl, beaming with happiness that her 2 favorite people were officially becoming a family. Victoria wore a simple white dress. Tommy wore the first suit he'd ever owned. The guest list included security guards and CEOs, janitors and board members, neighbors from Oak Street and colleagues from Sterling Industries. Mrs. Kim gave Lily away at the altar, tears streaming down her face as she watched the little girl she'd helped raise find the family she'd always needed. I never thought I'd find love like this, Victoria said in her vows. You taught me that a hero isn't someone who wears a cape or has superpowers. A hero is someone who chooses love over fear, courage over safety, others over themselves. You saved my life that day in the cafe, but you've been saving it every day since. Tommy's vows were simpler. You saw potential in a broken man and gave him a chance to become someone better. You loved my daughter like she was your own. You made us believe in happily ever after. I promised to spend the rest of my life proving that your faith in me wasn't misplaced. 5 years after Tommy took a bullet for a stranger, their story had become legend at Sterling Industries. New employees learned about the security guard who became a vice president, the CEO who chose character over credentials, the love story that started with an act of heroism. Tommy and Victoria had 2 more children together, twins named Hope and Grace. Lily, now 11, was an amazing big sister who helped with everything from diaper changes to bedtime stories. The Tommy Chen Community Center served hundreds of families. The Employee Assistance Fund had helped thousands of workers through difficult times. The scholarship program had sent dozens of deserving students to college. But the real legacy was simpler than all the programs and achievements. Tommy had shown that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when they chose courage over comfort. Victoria had proven that success meant nothing without compassion. Together, they demonstrated that love could grow from the most unexpected moments. Victoria stood in their kitchen, making breakfast for her family. The house was filled with the sounds of children laughing, Tommy getting ready for work, life being lived to its fullest. She thought about that terrifying day in the cafe when she was sure she was going to die. About Tommy's split-second decision to save a stranger. About how one moment of courage had changed everything. What are you thinking about? Tommy asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Just grateful, Victoria said, leaning into his embrace. For that day, for this life, for you. Tommy kissed her cheek. No regrets about giving up the penthouse for suburban chaos? Victoria looked around at the beautiful chaos of their family life. Toys scattered on the floor, children's artwork covering the refrigerator, the warm mess of a house filled with love. Not for a single second, she said. Lily ran into the kitchen already dressed for school. Mom, Dad, can we go to the community center after school? I want to show Hope and Grace the reading program. Of course, sweetheart, Victoria said, as her family bustled around her, getting ready for another ordinary day. Victoria realized that Tommy had been wrong about one thing. He was a hero, not because he'd taken a bullet, but because he'd chosen to build a life dedicated to making other people's lives better. And sometimes, that's the most heroic thing of all.